Ever feel like you're just drowning in data, trying to make a decision, but the more you analyze, the more you get confused?
Oh, absolutely.
I know I have.
Yeah.
But what if there's a smarter, simpler way to handle those situations?
Yeah.
This time on the deep dive, we're diving into New Smart Management by Jochen Reb. He's a leading voice in the world of heuristics.
Right.
Those little rules of thumb that we use sometimes without even realizing it.
He's incredible. What's so fascinating about his work is that he shows how these simple rules, these smart heuristics, can actually be more effective than those complex models that we're all taught to rely on, especially in the business world where things change so quickly.
Exactly.
Oh.
Jochen Reb, he argues that our brains are actually hardwired for these shortcuts.
Right.
And that if we lean into them, we can actually be more effective.
Absolutely.
Kind of like a chess grandmaster. They don't calculate every single possible move, right?
Yeah.
They're relying on patterns and intuition.
It's about recognizing that the business world, it isn't a perfectly predictable game of roulette. It's more like navigating a jungle,
Right.
full of unknowns, twists, and turns. And that's where those traditional models, they often fall short.
Right.
They just don't quite cut it in that kind of large world scenario.
So instead of getting lost in endless analysis,
Mm-hmm.
maybe we should be focusing on finding the solution that works best in the real world.
Yeah.
What the book calls the ecologically rational approach.
It makes you think, right? Like you wouldn't use a hammer to tighten a screw.
Right.
You would use a screwdriver.
Right.
Different situations call for different tools. And sometimes the simplest tool is the most effective one.
Absolutely.
It's about having the right tool for the job.
That makes total sense.
Yeah.
But let's be honest, doesn't heuristics sometimes feel like a fancy word for going with your gut?
Right.
And isn't that kind of the opposite of what we're taught in business school?
Yeah, you've hit on some common misconceptions about heuristics. And the book does a great job of dismantling those myths. They're not inherently irrational heuristics or just for, those really simple choices.
Right.
They're often rooted in years of experience, of expertise.
Okay, I need an example. Show me the heuristics in action.
Okay. Picture a seasoned handball player. They have to make a split-second pass. They don't have time to make complex calculations.
Right.
They rely on instinct. And studies show that for experts, that first instinctive thought, that gut feeling, is often the most accurate.
Wow.
It's called the fluency heuristic. And it highlights how speed and accuracy don't have to be at odds with each other.
So trust in your gut can actually be a sign of expertise, not laziness.
Exactly.
But what about something like, say, managing investments?
Mm-hmm.
Surely you need complex algorithms and spreadsheets to navigate the stock market, right?
Right. You might be surprised. The book tells the story of Harry Markowitz. This guy won a Nobel Prize for his incredibly complex model on portfolio theory.
Wow.
You know what he used for his own personal investments?
Don't tell me he threw darts at a board with different stocks.
Not quite. He used something called the 1N rule.
Okay.
Remarkably simple. You just divide your investments equally across your chosen options.
Okay.
And here's the kicker. This straightforward heuristic can actually outperform some of those fancy formulas, especially when you're dealing with the unpredictable nature of the market.
Wow, so sometimes less really is more.
Sometimes.
This is already challenging everything I thought I knew about decision making.
Yeah.
Maybe give me another example.
Yeah.
Something a little more relatable, less Wall Street.
Okay, let's talk about something we've probably all experienced. The power of brand names.
Okay.
How often have you chosen a product simply because you recognize the brand?
Right.
That's the recognition heuristic at play.
Okay.
It's often a reasonable shortcut because, let's face it, brand recognition is often linked with quality, at least to some extent.
Right.
So it makes sense, right?
Yeah.
But again, it's a heuristic.
And we see companies leveraging that all the time.
All the time.
Just think about those marketing campaigns that are always flooding our screens.
Sure.
But it is a good reminder that just because something is familiar doesn't automatically make it the best choice.
It doesn't mean it's the best, exactly. And that's why having a variety of tools in our decision-making toolbox is crucial.
Absolutely. Okay, so we've got our trusty recognition heuristic for those quick grocery store decisions.
Right?
But what about when we need a little more structure?
Right.
Step-by-step approach to decision-making. You mentioned something about fast and frugal trees.
Exactly. Think of them like flow charts for decisions.
Okay.
They guide you through these simple yes-no questions
Right.
to reach a conclusion.
Okay.
Surprisingly effective.
So instead of getting bogged down in every single detail,
Yeah,
you're focusing on the key factors that really matter.
precisely.
Okay.
The book gives this great example of managers using this approach to decide whether to retain or let go of a salesperson. They might start by asking, is this person's average performance above average?
Right.
If yes, they stay. If not,
Got it.
they move on to the next question.
Okay.
Perhaps looking at recent sales trends.
Yeah.
Streamlined, efficient, focused.
Tipping my language.
Yeah.
Anything that helps cut through all the noise and get to like the heart of the matter faster.
Right, there's so many.
Yeah.
And we're just inundated with information these days.
Right, exactly.
Ever heard the phrase, if it ain't broke, don't fix it?
Right.
That's the essence of imitation heuristics, learning from the successes of others.
Okay.
Why reinvent the wheel when someone else has already paved the road?
So spotting a winning formula and kind of like adapting it to your own context.
Exactly.
Kind of like reverse engineering success.
Exactly. The book highlights SoftBank's investment strategy as a prime example.
Okay.
They call it the time machine heuristic.
Okay.
They identify successful business models in the U.S.
Right.
Then they replicate those models in other markets that are trailing behind. Interesting.
They're essentially leveraging proven ideas.
Right.
And that first mover advantage.
So it's like they have a crystal ball, but instead of predicting the future,
Right.
they're creating it based on what's already worked.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
But as we've been saying, it's not about blindly using the same tool for every job.
Right.
The key is knowing which heuristic to use.
Exactly.
In which situation.
You've hit the nail on the head.
Right.
That's what separates, I think, effective decision-making from just relying on the same old routine.
Right.
And speaking of adapting to different situations,
Yes.
let's shift gears for a moment and think about how this all applies to leadership.
Okay. Because leaders are often the ones making those high-stakes decisions, often under immense pressure. Right.
Absolutely.
How can these heuristics help them navigate those choppy waters?
Heuristics can empower leaders to make, I think, faster, more confident decisions.
Right.
Remember that classic research by Mintzberg?
On how fragmented a manager's day can be.
Right.
Constantly bombarded with information.
Like trying to drink from a fire hydrant.
Exactly. Rarely a moment for deep reflection.
Right.
Heuristics give leaders a framework for cutting through the noise and focusing on what truly matters in that moment.
And that can really help reduce those feelings of overwhelm
Absolutely.
that come with information overload, right?
Yeah.
Because when you're just paralyzed by information, it's tough to make any decision.
It's impossible.
Let alone a good one.
Yeah, you just freeze up.
Exactly.
That's the last thing you want.
Right.
Especially in a leadership position.
Right, because then no one's making a decision.
Right.
And nothing's moving forward.
Exactly.
Right.
But it goes beyond just speed and clarity.
Okay.
Though using heuristics can actually boost transparency and trust within a team.
How so?
When everyone understands the simple rules guiding the decision-making process,
Right.
it creates a sense of openness and predictability. And when leaders are willing to own their decisions, even those based on gut feelings,
Okay.
it builds credibility
Okay.
and fosters a healthier relationship with mistakes.
Okay, hold on. A healthier relationship with mistakes. You're saying leaders should be okay with making mistakes.
It's not about being careless,
Right.
but about recognizing that errors are inevitable.
Right. Especially in like complex, rapidly changing environments.
Exactly.
Of course they're going to do mistakes.
It's impossible to be perfect.
Right.
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 The key is to create a culture where mistakes are seen as learning opportunities,
Okay.
not something to be punished or
Right.
swept under the rug.
So it's about shifting from a fear of failure
Yes,
to a culture of curiosity and like continuous improvement.
precisely.
Okay.
And the book provides a compelling example
Okay.
from the world of aviation.
Okay.
Think about those rigorous checklists
Yeah.
and incident reporting systems they use in airline cockpits.
Right.
Pilots are trained to speak up if they spot something amiss.
Right.
And there's no shame in admitting a mistake.
Right.
It's a huge part of why flying is statistically so safe.
Because they're not hiding errors. They're learning from them
Exactly.
and preventing those same mistakes from happening again.
Yes.
That's a powerful lesson.
It is. It is.
But doesn't this idea of trusting your gut,
Yeah.
of embracing simple rules,
Right.
doesn't that seem at odds with everything we're told about data-driven decision-making?
Right.
Are all those spreadsheets and algorithms just window dressing?
Not at all. Not at all. Data and analytics are incredibly valuable tools.
Okay.
But they don't always tell the whole story.
Okay.
It's about finding the right balance.
Okay.
Recognizing when data is essential.
Right.
And when it might actually be hindering.
Right.
Our ability to make a timely and effective decision.
So trusting your gut, even in a world that is obsessed with data, is not just acceptable.
Right.
It's often essential for success.
Often, and I think the book really highlights this well,
Yeah.
it reveals how even seasoned executives, people who've been doing this for years,
Right.
they often feel this pressure to justify their intuitive decisions with hard data after the fact.
Interesting.
They'll make a call based on their gut
Yeah.
and then ask their team to back it up with data later.
So they're essentially putting the cart before the horse.
Yeah, kind of.
Why do you think they do that?
I think it often boils down to a fear of appearing irrational or unscientific.
Interesting.
There's this perception that gut decisions are somehow less valid.
Right.
Even though, as we've seen, they can be incredibly accurate.
Especially for those with experience and expertise.
Especially for those with experience and expertise.
It's almost like there's this unspoken bias against intuition in the business world.
There is.
But we need to remember that our intuition is a powerful tool,
Absolutely.
honed over years of experience. It's not some mystical force.
Right.
It's our brain making lightning-fast connections based on patterns and knowledge that we might not even be consciously aware of.
Exactly.
But that doesn't mean we should just throw data out the window, right?
No, absolutely not.
Right.
The book is very clear about the limitations of intuition.
Okay.
It's not a magic bullet.
Right? Yeah.
It's about finding that sweet spot,
Right.
between gut feeling and data, between speed and analysis,
100%.
between imitating and innovating.
So finding the right tool for the right job,
There you go.
just like you were saying earlier.
Exactly.
Now, I can't help but wonder, where does this leave us in a world that is increasingly shaped by artificial intelligence?
Right.
Isn't AI the ultimate decision-making tool?
Yeah.
Will we even need heuristics in the future?
It's a big question, isn't it? This
Yeah.
whole idea of AI, will it make these simple rules, these heuristics, obsolete? The book really dives into this tension between human intuition and AI, and it's not a simple case of, out with the old, in with the new.
So it's not about humans versus machines.
Right.
It's about finding ways for them to work together.
Exactly. And the book talks about this idea of psychological AI,
Okay.
designing algorithms that are actually based on human expertise.
Interesting.
Imagine teaching AI to think more like us,
I'll go.
to leverage those intuitive leaps and bounds that our brains are so good at making.
So we're essentially trying to, bottle that secret sauce of human intuition
Yeah.
and translate it into something AI can use.
Exactly. And what's fascinating is that there are already instances where these simpler, psychologically inspired models are actually outperforming those super complex machine learning algorithms, especially in unpredictable real-world situations. It's almost like AI is rediscovering the power of simplicity.
Okay, that's mind-blowing. So it seems like we'll always need these smart heuristics, these elegant shortcuts, even in a future that's, dominated by AI.
It's not just about having the tools, but knowing when to use them. Think back to those managers, right?
Right.
Deciding who to give bonuses to and who to let go. Their years of experience, their gut feelings, those played a huge role in knowing which decision-making approach was right for that particular situation.
It's like that saying, knowledge is knowing what to do, wisdom is knowing when to do it.
That's it.
So how do we cultivate that wisdom when it comes to decision-making?
It's a process, isn't it? It's about honing our intuition, understanding those nuances of different situations, being willing to adapt. And I think the book makes a really interesting point here about business schools.
Okay.
Instead of just focusing on those complex theoretical models, what if they also emphasize this idea of ecological rationality?
Right.
Of building that diverse toolbox of heuristics and knowing when to use which tool.
So it's like we're equipping a new generation of leaders with a toolkit, right?
Yes.
That includes both those high-tech gadgets and those trusty, time-tested tools that have always been essential.
It's about embracing the power of data and the wisdom of experience, recognizing that the best decisions often come from that blend of head and heart, analysis and intuition.
This has been such an eye-opening conversation.
Yeah.
We've really challenged a lot of assumptions today about what it means to be a smart decision maker. And it's actually quite liberating, I think, to realize that simplicity can be a strength,
Absolutely.
not a weakness.
Right?
and that sometimes the most effective solutions are the most elegant ones.
The most elegant, yes.
So to our listeners, next time you're facing a decision that just seems impossible to make, remember those smart heuristics. What's the simplest, most elegant solution? And how does it feel? Does it feel right in your gut? Maybe that's all you need to navigate those murky waters.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into smarter decisions. Until next time.